The success of the client catapulted Brad Renfro into a world he could have scarcely imagined. He went from being an anonymous schoolboy in Knoxville to one of the most in-demand young actors in Hollywood. The offers came pouring in, and he soon found himself working on a string of high-profile films throughout the mid to late 1990s. He starred opposite Joseph Mazzello in the 1995 drama The Cure, a moving story about two young boys, one of whom has AIDS. The film, though not a huge box office success, earned Renfro critical acclaim for his sensitive and nuanced portrayal of a troubled youth who befriends his afflicted neighbor. That same year, he appeared in Tom and Huck, a Disney adaptation of Mark Twain's classic novel, playing Huckleberry Finn opposite Jonathan Taylor Thomas's Tom Sawyer. While the film was a more light-hearted affair, it showcased his versatility and his ability to carry a movie. It was around this time that the comparisons to other young actors of his generation began to surface. He was often mentioned in the same breath as Leonardo DiCaprio and Edward Furlong, but the actor he was most frequently compared to and often competed with for roles was Jonathan Brandis. Brandis, like Renfro, was a teen idol with a string of successful films and television shows to his name. They were both seen as talented, charismatic actors with the potential for long and successful careers. There was a sense of rivalry between them, a competition for the same coveted roles. Renfro, in a later interview, would admit to this, recalling how he lost the lead role in the 1999 film Outside Providence to Brandis. The film, a coming-of-age story set in the 1970s, was a project that Renfro had been passionate about, and losing the part to his perceived rival was a significant blow. The connection between Renfro and Brandis, however, went deeper than a simple professional rivalry. Both were seen as potential heirs to River Phoenix, the brilliant young actor who had died of a drug overdose in 1993. Phoenix's death left a void in Hollywood, and there was a constant search for the next young actor who could fill his shoes. Renfro and Brandis, with their combination of talent, good looks, and a certain brooding intensity, were prime candidates. This mantle, however, proved to be a heavy one to bear. The pressure to live up to Phoenix's legacy, combined with the intense scrutiny of the media, created a toxic environment for these young stars. Tragically, the parallels between Renfro, Brandis, and Phoenix would extend beyond their careers. Both Renfro and Brandis would struggle with the pressures of fame and the darker side of Hollywood. And in a particularly poignant and eerie twist, friends of Brandis would later claim that he had become obsessed with Renfro in the years leading up to his own suicide in 2003. He reportedly kept a diary in which he frequently wrote about Renfro, seeing him as a reflection of his own struggles and fears. Despite the mounting pressures, Renfro continued to work steadily. In 1996, he had a memorable role in Barry Levinson's legal drama Sleepers, holding his own in an ensemble cast that included Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, and Brad Pitt. He played the younger version of Pitt's character Michael Sullivan, one of a group of boys from Hell's Kitchen who are sent to a brutal reform school after a prank goes horribly wrong. His performance was raw and powerful, capturing the innocence and trauma of a childhood stolen by violence. He followed this with a lead role in Bryan Singer's 1998 psychological thriller, Apt Pupil. The film, based on a Stephen King novella, was a dark and disturbing exploration of the nature of evil. Renfro played Todd Bowden, a bright high school student who discovers that his elderly neighbor, played by Ian McKellen, is a fugitive Nazi war criminal. The film was controversial for its dark themes and graphic content, and it pushed Renfro into even more challenging and mature territory. His performance was widely praised, with critics noting his ability to convey the complex and unsettling transformation of his character. As the 1990s came to a close, Renfro seemed to be successfully navigating the difficult transition from child star to adult actor. He was taking on increasingly complex and challenging roles, and he was earning the respect of his peers and critics. However, behind the scenes, the cracks were beginning to show. The pressures of fame, the access to a world of adult temptations, and the unresolved issues from his childhood were starting to take their toll. The same year that Apt Pupil was released, Renfro, at the age of 15, was arrested for the first time for possession of cocaine and marijuana. It was the beginning of a long and public battle with addiction that would ultimately derail his career and tragically cost him his life. The story of Brad Renfro is incomplete without understanding the deep personal struggles that plagued him throughout his life. While the public saw a talented actor with a promising career, behind the scenes, a much darker narrative was unfolding. His battle with substance abuse, which began in his early teens, was not just a series of isolated incidents, but a pervasive and relentless struggle that shaped his life and ultimately led to his untimely death. His first arrest in 1998 was a wake-up call, but it was one that he was not yet ready to heed. The charges were later dropped, but it was a clear indication that he was heading down a dangerous path. In the years that followed, his legal troubles became more frequent and more serious. In 2000, he and a friend were arrested for attempting to steal a 45-foot yacht from a Fort Lauderdale marina. It was a bizarre and ill-conceived plan, and Renfro, who was just 18 at the time, pleaded guilty to a lesser charge and was placed on probation. The incident was widely reported in the media, further cementing his image as a Hollywood bad boy. This was a label that Renfro himself seemed to embrace at times, perhaps as a defense mechanism against the intense scrutiny he was under. He cultivated a rebellious image with tattoos, a penchant for rock and roll, and a general air of defiance. But beneath the tough exterior was a deeply sensitive and troubled young man who was struggling to cope with the pressures of his life. In interviews, he would often speak with a startling honesty about his struggles, admitting that he felt like an outsider in Hollywood and that he was uncomfortable with the trappings of fame. He once said, I'm just a poor boy from Tennessee. I'm not a Hollywood kid." This quote, in many ways, gets to the heart of his dilemma. He was a product of a world that was vastly different from the one he was now a part of, and he never seemed to be able to reconcile the two. He was caught between two identities, the down-to-earth kid from Knoxville and the troubled movie star. His addiction had a devastating impact on his career. While he continued to work, the quality of his roles began to decline. He appeared in a number of independent films, some of which were well received, such as the 2001 drama Bully, a harrowing and unflinching look at a real-life murder among a group of Florida teenagers. But he was no longer the in-demand star he had once been. His unreliability, a direct result of his addiction, made him a risk for major studios. He would show up late to set, or not at all. His performances, once so consistently brilliant, became erratic. There were moments of hope, periods when it seemed like he was getting his life back on track. He entered rehab on multiple occasions, and there were times when he was clean and sober. During these periods, he would often speak with a renewed sense of optimism about his future. He expressed a desire to get back to the kind of work he had done as a child, to recapture the passion and joy he had once felt for acting. One particularly poignant and rarely discussed aspect of his personal life was his relationship with his son, Yamato. The existence of his son, who was born in Japan in 2003, was not widely known until after his death. The boy's mother was a woman Renfro had met while filming Bully. While his relationship with his son was complicated by his addiction and legal troubles, those who were close to him say that he loved his son deeply and that the desire to be a good father was a powerful motivator for him to get clean. But the pull of addiction was too strong. In 2005, he was arrested in a sting operation on Skid Row in Los Angeles and charged with attempted possession of heroin. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation and ordered to enroll in a drug treatment program. It was a stark and public humiliation for the once promising star. A photograph of him being led away in handcuffs, looking gaunt and disheveled, became a symbol of his tragic fall from grace. In the final years of his life, Renfro was a shadow of his former self. The bright, charismatic boy from The Client was gone, replaced by a man who was clearly in the grip of a powerful and destructive disease. His friends and family were deeply concerned, but they felt helpless to save him. He was trapped in a cycle of addiction and despair, and there seemed to be no way out. The promise of his youth had been all but extinguished, and his story was hurtling towards its inevitable and tragic conclusion. The life of Brad Renfro was not without its share of controversies and debates, many of which continue to be discussed long after his death. These controversies are not just about his personal struggles with addiction and his legal troubles. They also touch upon larger issues within the entertainment industry, particularly its treatment of child stars. One of the most significant controversies surrounding Renfro is the question of culpability. Who was to blame for his tragic downfall? Was it simply a case of a young man making a series of bad choices? Or were there larger systemic forces at play? Many have pointed the finger at Hollywood, arguing that the industry is a predatory environment for young, vulnerable actors. They argue that children are thrust into a world of adult pressures and temptations without adequate protection or support. Renfro, a 10-year-old boy from a working-class background, was particularly ill-equipped to handle the sudden fame and fortune that came his way. There is evidence to support this view. In the 1990s, the support systems for child actors were not as robust as they are today. There was less emphasis on protecting their mental and emotional well-being. Renfro himself spoke about the disorienting experience of being a child on a movie set, surrounded by adults and expected to behave like a professional. He was, in many ways, an adult in a child's body, and he missed out on many of the normal experiences of childhood. However, others argue that this view absolves Renfro of personal responsibility. They point out that many other child stars have successfully navigated the transition to adulthood without succumbing to the same destructive behaviors. They argue that Renfro, like any individual, had agency and that he made choices that ultimately led to his demise. The truth, as is often the case, likely lies somewhere in between. Renfro was undoubtedly a victim of a system that was not designed to protect him, but he was also a young man who made a series of tragic and self-destructive choices. Another area of debate concerns the nature of his talent. Was he a truly great actor, or was he simply a natural who got lucky with his first role? There are those who argue that his performance in The Client was a fluke, a case of perfect casting where the line between the actor and the character was blurred. They point to the fact that he never again reached the same heights of critical acclaim. However, a closer look at his filmography reveals a body of work that is far more impressive and nuanced than he is often given credit for. His performances in films like The Cure, Sleepers, and Apt Pupil demonstrate a remarkable range and depth. He had a rare ability to convey a sense of world weariness and vulnerability that was far beyond his years. He was not just playing himself, he was a gifted and intuitive actor who was capable of inhabiting a wide range of characters. His talent was undeniable, and it is one of the great tragedies of his story that it was never fully realized. The comparisons to River Phoenix and Jonathan Brandis also raise interesting and complex questions. Was the heir to River Phoenix label a blessing or a curse? On the one hand, it was a recognition of his immense talent and potential. On the other hand, it placed an enormous amount of pressure on his young shoulders. It also created a morbid and self-fulfilling prophecy, linking him to a narrative of tragic, premature death. The story of Jonathan Brandis's supposed obsession with Renfro adds another layer of complexity to this narrative, suggesting a shared sense of doom among these young actors. Finally, there is the controversy surrounding his death itself. While the official cause of death was a heroin overdose, there are those who believe that there is more to the story. The fact that he died just weeks before the death of another young actor, Heath Ledger, from a similar cause, led to speculation about a bad batch of drugs circulating in Hollywood at the time. However, there has never been any concrete evidence to support this theory. The controversies and debates surrounding Brad Renfro's life and death are a reflection of the complexity of his story. He was not a simple, one-dimensional figure. He was a talented, troubled, and deeply human individual who was caught in a web of circumstances that were largely beyond his control. His story is a cautionary tale, a tragedy, and a source of ongoing fascination and debate. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about fame, addiction, and the price of talent in a world that is often unforgiving. The death of Brad Renfro on January 15, 2008, at the age of 25, was a tragic and predictable end to a life that had been spiraling out of control for years. He was found dead in his Los Angeles apartment by his friends. The cause of death was an accidental overdose of heroin and morphine. Just a few weeks later, the world would be shocked by the similar death of Heath Ledger, another brilliant young actor at the height of his powers. The two deaths, so close together, cast a dark shadow over Hollywood and served as a stark reminder of the devastating toll of addiction. The immediate aftermath of Renfro's death was a flurry of media attention. The narrative that quickly emerged was that of a talented child star who had succumbed to the dark side of fame. His story was told as a cautionary tale, a warning to other young actors about the dangers of Hollywood. While there was an outpouring of grief from his fans and those who had worked with him, there was also a sense of inevitability about his death. It was the tragic but not entirely unexpected final act in a life that had been marked by so much struggle and pain. The long-term consequences of Renfro's life and death are more complex and far-reaching. On a personal level, his death was a devastating loss for his family and friends. His grandmother Joanne, who had raised him and been a constant source of support throughout his life, was heartbroken. His son Yamato was left to grow up without a father. The pain of his loss is a private and ongoing one for those who knew and loved him. On a cultural level, Renfro's story has had a lasting impact. He has become a symbol of a lost generation of young actors, a group of talented and promising individuals who were chewed up and spit out by the Hollywood machine. His story, along with those of River Phoenix, Jonathan Brandis, and others, has forced a conversation about the need for better protection and support for child stars. In the years since his death, there have been significant changes in the industry, with a greater emphasis on providing young actors with education, counseling, and a more stable and supportive environment on set. His legacy as an actor is also a significant one. While his career was cut short, he left behind a body of work that is a testament to his immense talent. His performance in The Client remains one of the greatest child performances in film history. His work in films like The Cure, Sleepers, and Apt Pupil showcased his range and depth as an actor. He had a rare and special gift, and it is a tragedy that he was never able to fully realize his potential. He is remembered by those who worked with him as a natural, intuitive actor who was capable of great things. But perhaps the most enduring significance of Brad Renfro's story is its human element. His life was a stark and powerful reminder of the fragility of the human spirit and the devastating impact of addiction. He was not just a movie star, he was a son, a father, and a friend. He was a young man with dreams and aspirations who was ultimately consumed by a disease that he could not overcome. His story is a deeply human one, and it is this that makes it so compelling and so tragic. In the years since his death, there has been a renewed appreciation for his work and a deeper understanding of the struggles he faced. He is no longer just a cautionary tale. He is seen as a complex and tragic figure, a victim of both his own demons and a system that failed to protect him. His story continues to resonate with audiences because it speaks to a universal human experience, the struggle between light and darkness, between hope and despair. It is a story that reminds us of the importance of compassion and understanding, and the preciousness of a life that was lost too soon. In the end, what are we to make of the life and death of Brad Renfro? Is it simply another sad story of a child star who couldn't handle the pressures of fame? Or is there something more to be gleaned from his tragic journey? Perhaps the most fitting way to remember him is not as a cautionary tale, but as a complex and deeply human individual, a poor boy from Tennessee, who was blessed with an extraordinary gift and cursed with a heavy burden. His life was a series of contradictions. He was a brilliant actor who often seemed to resent the very craft that brought him fame. He was a sensitive soul who projected an image of a tough, rebellious bad boy. He was a loving father who was unable to escape the grip of a devastating addiction. In these contradictions, we see not a caricature of a fallen star, but a reflection of the complexities of the human condition. His story is a powerful reminder of the importance of compassion. It is easy to judge him for his choices, to dismiss him as another casualty of the Hollywood lifestyle. But to do so is to ignore the profound pain and struggle that lay beneath the surface. He was a young man who was crying out for help in the only way he knew how, and for too long his cries went unanswered. His legacy is not just in the films he left behind, but in the conversation his life and death have sparked. He has forced us to look more critically at the way we treat our young stars, to question the ethics of an industry that so often puts profit before people. His story is a call for greater empathy, for a more humane and supportive environment for those who are thrust into the spotlight at a young and vulnerable age. Brad Renfro's life was a fleeting, brilliant flame that was extinguished far too soon. He was a talent that was never fully realized, a promise that was left unfulfilled. But in his short and troubled life, he left an indelible mark on those who knew him, and on the art form he so briefly but brilliantly made. He was, in the words of one of his co-stars, a beautiful, beautiful boy. And it is this beauty, this raw, untamed talent, and this tragic human story that we should remember when we think of him. His life was a tragedy, but it was also a testament to the enduring power of a singular, unforgettable talent. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.